if you have an email list, especially a subsect of that that's a customer list, people who ever tell us they're not making money and they have these things, we're just like, oh, you're not running enough sales promos. And they're never like, no, we run a sales promo every month. That's never what they say. They're like, oh, yeah, we could do that a little better, I guess.
You are now listening to the Creative Juice podcast brought to you by Entrepreneur.io.
What's up, Indies? Fellow independent musicians, welcome back to the Creative Juice podcast. I'm your co-host, Circa. With me, as always, my co-host, Jack McCarthy. How's it going, Jack?
What's up, dude? Happy to be here. Excited for this topic. Excited to dive into the darker side of the IndieX agency today. I think this is going to be fun.
Yeah, absolutely. So today, I get to interview Jack on a particular case study that's going to be of interest to any of you artists out there who, maybe your music career is already off to a good start, or it's a bit longer in duration than most, and you've run into a trouble area or a rough patch. It's also going to be relevant to those of you who have yet to sort of monetize your music career and you have no idea how this whole thing is supposed to ever make money. Because this is a tale of a music career that once made a fair amount of coin and then ran into some trouble. Is that correct, Jack?
For sure, yeah. Would you like me to give some helpful baseline context here?
Give us some background, dude.
Yeah, so we were working with a client of ours, an artist at IndieX, our music marketing agency, a long-standing client who found themselves in a little bit of a rut, financially speaking, a little bit of a rut. And this was around the fall of last year, probably right around mid-October, I want to say. They found themselves in a bit of a rut where they were looking at their finances and scratching their heads being like, how did we get here today? It seems like we're running out of money. Our business isn't generating enough money to cover our expenses anymore. And that's a scary place to be in for any kind of business. And so we sat down for a strategy session and they said, Jack, we got to do something about this. And we'd been running marketing campaigns for them for years. They've been a client of ours for a very, very long time, this artist. And for full context, they were in a place where they kind of went into hibernation mode a little bit because they were focusing on writing and recording. And this is, I think, a helpful kind of jumping off point for this discussion about rescuing a bit of a business. And the rut that they found themselves in was sort of the trap of going into studio mode and creative mode and neglecting the marketing mode and the monetization arm of your business. And that's exactly where they found themselves in. They wanted to be head down, focused only on making the music, and weren't really focusing as much on the nurturing of their fans and their customers and continuing to make money. So that's a bit of a helpful background, I hope. Fire away.
Yeah, well, it's important to note that this doesn't just happen to artists, because there's a corollary here to going into locking yourself in the studio and forgetting about making money is sort of locking yourself in product development or, service development and forgetting about acquisition. Happens to all businesses, has happened to businesses Jack and I have been a part of. And so it's a pretty common thing, when things are going well, it's like, let's work on making more product or better product. And you can get so wrapped up in that you forget all about like having a business be financially successful. But sort of kind of now that you've laid the background, presumably this group or this artist had been in a period of financial success in the past. What would you say are the activities that previously contributed to financial success for them before we get into sort of how you built back better, so to speak?
Totally. That's a great question. And actually, before we touch on that, I think that's a really interesting point that you make about going into product and service development mode and getting stuck in that rut and not focusing on acquisition. A friend of mine who is an absolute brilliant mind when it comes to business operations, I was recently having a conversation with her, and we were talking about the two different types of owners or founders in a company. And she was saying that typically she sees business owners fall into one of two categories. They tend to be product focused entrepreneurs or acquisition and marketing, promotional, sales driven entrepreneurs. And a lot of times she'll find in business partnerships, people can either split off into one of two of those camps and they'll kind of drive each other, or you'll be in one camp. And I think creatives of any kind, artists, bands, musicians, YouTubers, whoever, also can fall into these categories. So I hadn't thought about that until just now, that conversation that I had a couple months ago. But I think it's a unique point. Creatives definitely run the risk of falling more into the product driven camp, which can find themselves in situations like these with a bit more fierceness and maybe a colder winter, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, in bands, there's typically like, you'll find like one member of the band is sort of the band's first manager de facto.
That was me. Is always me.
Yeah. They do the growth and the driving of the band's financial success to begin with. And then, sometimes it's the same person, but you'll have like the creative visionary who's more interested in making more and better music and improving how that works. So that said, how do those roles play into this act, and kind of what were the things that initially led to their success before there was a downturn?
For sure. Yeah. Well, so the place that they found themselves in recently, as I said, was solely related to going into creative mode. But prior to this, what led to their success was a heavy focus on, you know, audience growth at the very, very top of the funnel for them. They've had a number of viral videos over the years. They've had songs go viral, music videos go viral. And on the back of that, they focused a lot on customer creation and ascension. So they ran a lot of different types of funnels over the years. Opt-in funnels with sales offers attached to them on the back end, free plus shipping and handling funnels for music, and then regular sales promotions and merch drops on a monthly to, every 6 weeks kind of cadence. This created a lot of ongoing monetization as well as a membership on the back end. We talked about membership a couple episodes ago, and actually some of the conversations that I've had over the years about membership has been with this artist. So we'll link back to that in the show notes so that you guys can check it out if you didn't catch our episode about passive revenue in music. But those are the primary things that they were focusing on over the years that really helped sustain their business and grow it. They focused a lot on really great merch drops, products that their fans really dug. And that was really a key focus. We were running a lot of those kind of campaigns. And then when they got into the studio, things kind of slowed down a little bit. Product development slowed down. They were having conversations amongst themselves and with their management team about how they wanted to portray themselves online and what they wanted their brand to feel like. And I've found over the years, and maybe this is a bit of a hot take, but as soon as an artist starts talking with their team about brand, it automatically says to me, we're going to market in a way that's not as good as it used to be.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's no secret that we're more like direct response oriented than sort of branding focus. Not to say that branding doesn't have its place. It certainly does at certain high levels of audience that, it can start to matter.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it can
for sure.
definitely be putting the cart before the horse. Very, even if you're pretty successful, you can still sort of turn things around by focusing on brand. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's a really good point to make. And I mean, you can see that with the marketing of some of the biggest acts in the world, is if you just take a look at their email marketing and how like brand heavy it is and not conversion focused at all. It just makes you want to throw up. The emails that I got just last weekend from some massive artists that I'm on their list, it's just like, oh my gosh, you guys are trying to sell product with this? You're not even saying anything in this email. Like there is no there is no response in direct response. It's just a bunch of pictures. Anyway, we could go on and on and on about that probably, but this is kind of the spot that they found themselves in, is the marketing and acquisition kind of dried up. They didn't have a lot of content coming out. They weren't releasing new music because they were working on new music. So at the very, very top of the funnel, as far as new fan, growth was concerned, that had kind of halted. But there was also nothing going on at the middle and the bottom of the funnel because there wasn't a lot of touring happening. We were, still kind of on the tail end of the COVID dry up of touring. So there wasn't really a whole lot happening from that perspective. So you could see how the gears of this machine kind of grinded to a halt. And it was scary. Honestly, there was like a series of kind of challenging, difficult conversations where we were like, okay, what are we going to do to right this ship a bit and get things going in the right direction?
Yeah. So typically in businesses, one or more of three things can happen. You can stop getting new leads, people who are potentially interested in your product. You can stop selling to your existing leads and customers. And you can sort of run out of your existing customers in such a way where, like, unless you have something new to present them, they're not probably going to buy anything else because they've already bought what they're going to buy. So each one of them requires its own way out. New leads, you need to scare up new attention. And with reselling your existing customers, probably the easiest one. If you're not doing that, it's really easy to get that ship right. And then running out of real things for your existing customers to be interested in is probably the scariest challenge you can have because you're starting from square one, or you really don't know what to do. How would you say that their issue, divided into those three categories?
So it was definitely more of the first two, where this artist was running into, not getting new people in the door, for one, for no reason other than they weren't marketing anything new. And two, they needed to start to sell to their existing audience again. That was the place that they found themselves in. It wasn't a lack of things to sell to their existing audience. It wasn't that they had exhausted their fan base by any sense. It was just kind of a bit of a drop-off point of wondering, like, what should we be doing and why? And I think that this is something that artists can fall into in particular, is those two categories. It's like, well, I don't have new music coming out, so why should I continue to promote the old stuff, right? And two, what should I be doing to sell to my existing customers in that time? And they're not hard questions to answer. And that was kind of the strategic approach that we took, is like, all right, what can we be doing in this time period? What was really nice was we were heading right into the tail end of Q4 here. So the timing couldn't have really been better. We were heading into a nice sales cycle for any type of business.
Right. Black Friday, Christmas.
Black Friday, the holidays, exactly. So we were heading into a really nice period of time for them to start selling again. So the immediate thing that we started looking towards was, okay, what can we be doing to get fresh blood in the door? And what can we be doing to start selling to your existing customers? So we immediately struck up a number of different sales campaigns where first we dropped in a plan for Black Friday sales, and we dropped in a plan for holiday sales. Those two kind of things fed into each other. So there was a Black Friday sale. They also they quickly recorded an EP of unreleased music that they hadn't released before. And I think this is a really helpful thing, and something for, I think, lots of artists to keep in mind right now, is recording and producing music has become so much easier to do. It's so democratized, it's such a level, even playing field that you can put together really quality stuff relatively quickly. And so they were like, okay, our fans want to buy music from us, we're going to put something together. So they put together an EP, and we launched it at Black Friday, and it was massively successful. So we put together that product, and we started running traffic on it. We started selling it to their email list. They had a big email list to work with. So we immediately used that as a jumping off point to start getting their existing customers and fans excited about something. It was a very quick way to, pivot into, yes, we're in the studio. Yes, we're still working on new music. Here's a taste of something that we haven't, given to you before. That was step number one. Step number two was, how do we shake up people in their audience that haven't bought from them already? And how do we get new, interested people? And what we did for that was, we took the record that they were coming off of the cycle from, the album cycle, which was about 3 years old at this point, and we started running a free plus shipping and handling funnel on that record. and we stacked that with a number of different CDs. We've talked about this kind of funnel numerous times on this show, especially recently. But we started running that to warm traffic, to email list, and to cold traffic as well. And that started kind of doing the work of selling to people that they've never sold to before, attracting new customers and attracting new fans. And that really started doing kind of, basically greased the wheels to the engine of their business again. And once we were out of the holiday cycle, we kept that funnel going and started doing consistent merch drops again. So you can sort of see like what this looked like for us with this artist was the big focus here is you're in the studio being busy creating. We just need to start selling again. And they didn't really have much of a problem doing that. It had just naturally kind of fallen out of their consciousness a bit. So once we started putting that back in the focus, all of a sudden the monetization engine was back on. And that's really what we did. So we started doing regular merch drops again, kind of on like a 6-week cadence. Nothing super, super crazy, but it's worked really well. The merch drops have just been honestly t-shirt drops. That was a really simple way, doing t-shirt drops every 4 to 6 weeks, putting that into place inside of a funnel for each one. So there were order bumps and upsells along the way, using that for existing customers, kind of keeping the monetization going there. And that brought them back from a place of like, we're not making any money to, okay, we're back on track again.
Yeah. So for those of you listening, Jack just ran through a whole bunch of our typical campaign strategy playbook, a lot of which you can learn how to do in Indie Pro, and a lot of which our IndieX agency does for artists on a weekly basis. But just to kind of rattle them off, number one, it seems like the first thing you did is exactly what we teach in our How to Generate Sales Year-Round training, which is sales promo. Really great excuse to run a sales promo is always Black Friday and holiday sales. So you took that excuse and really running a sales promo to your existing email list or an existing list of fans. It is the last ditch, effort if you're struggling with sales. Like it's almost guaranteed to work. Like if you have a warm email list, especially one of customers, running out a promo is a really great strategy. And so that's something we teach to do. Kind of couple that with email marketing for musicians, another one of our trainings where, to have that list in the first place and to know how to run email strategies and roll out those promos, you kind of got to know your way around an email list marketing platform. And then free push shipping and handling funnel. I was just talking to one of our lead strategists and coaches here at Entrepreneur, Jesse Gillen-Walters, today. And I was asking him, like, based on your experience in the coaching program and in the agency, like, what's the main thing that, like, what are some of the main trainings and strategies that we run now that we might not have looked at as hard earlier in the company's history? And he said free push shipping and handling funnel. He's like, that's the first thing I go to. And a lot of the other stuff that's before it is like, kind of like, if you can't run a free push shipping and handling funnel, we'll do these other things until you can. It was interesting to hear that, like, that should probably actually be our lead training nowadays is free push shipping and handling, because it just pulls out results and it's a great way to grow. So, seeing that you had both the not getting fresh blood problem and not selling them problem, free push shipping and handling is such a great way to fix that, because it not only gets you new people, but if it works, they're instantly becoming customers and they can instantly be ascended, they instantly are candidates for future follow-up promos. So
Right. For sure. Yeah. And I want to mention, actually, telling this story reminds me of another story of a different agency client that we started working with just a few months later. An artist approached us, a band actually, in this case, approached us and said, this is kind of our last ditch effort to make this e-commerce thing work. They said, we've tried everything. We don't really make much money online. We make some money from Spotify. We make the bulk of our revenue from touring. We do a little bit here and there in our online store. We haven't really dialed it in. We don't really know. We don't have a playbook that we follow. We don't have systems in place for doing it consistently. And we just haven't really figured it out. We haven't really figured out how to advertise it. And the first thing that we did with them when they came on board was immediately run a sales promotion. We did a push to get a bunch of leads onto their email list. And We did that organically with them. And then we immediately ran a sales promotion for an upcoming record. It was a pre-order actually, for an upcoming record coupled with some touring offers that they were doing. And that was like an immediate capital injection for them and a provable way to be like, all right, you've tried everything, but clearly you haven't tried this, which is exactly like what you were saying. It's like, it's the last ditch effort, but also it should kind of be the first thing you do when you're trying to monetize.
If you have an email list, especially a subsect of that that's a customer list, it's like people who ever tell us they're not making money and they have these things, we're just like, oh, you're not running enough sales promos. And they're never like, no, we run a sales promo every month. That's never what they say. They're like, oh yeah, we could do that a little better, I guess.
Yeah, it's even rare that I hear we could do that a little better. It's usually
We
like,
don't do that at all.
yeah, like maybe we've done that, maybe once. Yeah, so I think that's an interesting that was an interesting example that happened just a little bit later. Not necessarily an artist whose career was at risk or needed to be rescued, but someone who was in a place that, this band was like, oh man, like we just have tried it all, but we don't know how to make this really go. Maybe sometime we'll have to do a case study episode on that band in particular. That might be fun. But similar approach, run a sales promotion, get new product to your existing customers and subscribers, work to get them purchasing, put together a new offer. That worked really well to bring this band who really needed some immediate help what they needed. It got them right on track.
Yeah, it's so awesome that we can help do that for musicians, because like one thing the music industry is scarce on is like, how do I make money specifically right now, specifically without like luck? We kind of got the playbook for that at IndieX, and in our community, which is like, we really focus on sales strategies. And it's awesome to hear that just by like focusing on the things we normally do, they were able to, come back from the fray. Super awesome. I've been through this from a business perspective a lot of times, which is that like when you're running a business, there's typically a larger why. There's a reason you want to be doing this thing that doesn't have to do with dollars and cents. And so you feel okay taking your eye off the dollars and cents every once in a while, because that's not the main reason you did this. You could have got a job. You could have chosen, in most cases, people start businesses where if they really racked their brains, they could have picked a more profitable business to enter into, music industry being chief among the less profitable ones. So, it's easy to take your eye off that ball, but also like thinking about like, what is this band now capable of doing? What is the reality like? What can they plan for? What can they, what does the future look like? When you really focus on the dollars and cents, the sky's the limit with all that other stuff. So it's like often you won't get the things you really want out of the business unless you're focused on the bottom line. Through the bottom line, all else comes.
No, that's so true. That's so true. And I think if I can give any words of advice from my experience through this particularly challenging time with this one artist client was when you're struggling and you feel like your music business is kind of at a stop, in a rut, whatever you want to call it, definitely one, looking at the bottom line and not being afraid to market when things are hard. I think this is true of any business, but I think the temptation when dollars and cents are tight is to pull back on marketing budget when realistically that's the last thing you should be doing.
It's the exact opposite of what.
Yeah, you should be focusing on marketing budget and putting more in and putting more effort in. So that was realization number one, I think, for this artist. Realization number two was look back. It's funny. This is the first question you asked me today was, what were they doing before that was working for them? And we kind of ran that down. Look back at what you were doing before and do more of what works and less of what doesn't. In this case, the less of what doesn't was just, putting your head in the sand and being a creative in the studio, taking a couple hours out of your week to focus on selling and focusing on your customers makes all the difference in this case. So focusing back in on what was working before often can be the thing to do. That might not address, business faltering point number 3 that you mentioned was just like, you've run out of the ability to sell to your current customers. Thankfully, they weren't in that place where it was just like, the whole ecosystem is dried up. It definitely was not that.
It's usually not what's going on. It's
Yeah.
usually what people fear is going on when it's not actually the case.
Yeah, that's true. The worst fear is
People just don't care anymore and they'll never buy my stuff again.
yeah, that's the worst that's the worst case scenario, and it's definitely like that's the WebMD diagnosis of why your music business is failing, and it's definitely not true.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. So if you're an indie out there who's listening to this whole thing, this massive turnaround in this band's career, and you're like, I don't even sell things to my fans. Make money. What? People are making money at this?
You're making money?
If that's you, yeah. If that's you, man, I cannot recommend enough that you check out Free Push Shipping and Handling Funnel, which is one of our trainings. It's a strategy we use. We didn't invent it. You could probably find free information out there on the internet if you don't want to take the plunge into Indie Pro and train up with us. All we care about is that you utilize it because like it's a super powerful strategy because it not only the benefits are so huge because typically, even if it's break even, you're running ads to thousands and thousands and tens of thousands, and in some cases, hundreds of thousands of people getting all that exposure. And if even like 5% of them click through and buy what you got to offer, that pays for all that exposure. So it's what we call a self-liquidating offer. And the true benefit of that is that it accomplishes two goals in one. It gets you customers and revenue, and it also gets you exposure, which is something that most artists are looking for. They're just looking for it in ways that don't ever come back to them in terms of dollars.
Right.
So
yeah,
check it out.
It's true. We'll leave a link to Indie Pro in the show notes so that you guys can join us in the community. You can learn these strategies that we talked about today. Like Cirque said, everything that we did with this artist at IndieX to help them kind of turn the wheels on their music business again. They're all things that we train on together inside the community. It's good stuff. All the strategies that we do at the agency are things that we're talking about inside the community. So definitely worth checking out.
And all the people in that agency who do them teach those strategies to you.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. So yeah, that's definitely worth checking out, especially if you're in a place where you're wondering, how do I monetize this for the first time? Or how do I get back to where I was? But hopefully these questions and some of the answers that we talked about here on this episode today are useful for you if you are in a place where you're feeling like you're in a rut. As this was happening, it was funny. I've had this jotted down in the list of things that I wanted to talk about on Creative Juice pretty much since like the second week of having having conversations with this artist. I was like, oh, this is going to be so much fun to talk about one day when we get this turnaround going. Because at the core of it, I think the strategies, the playbook that we used, it's all fairly simple stuff. Again, like I said, it's really just going back to what was working for you before. Let's do more of that and do less of the things that got you to this point of being stuck.
Hell yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing the story with us, Jack.
For sure. If you are in a place where I'd be remiss not to mention, if you do have an audience like Cirque was saying, where you've got an email list, you've got a large audience of fans, people who know you, and you haven't monetized them through e-commerce, we'd love to talk to you at IndieX. So I'll make sure we link to our IndieX application here in the show notes as well. Love to hear what you're up to and how we might be able to partner with you and help. But other than that, we'll catch you guys next time on Creative Juice.
Peace out, yeah.
Peace out, Indies.